Hello and welcome to Baking on a Budget. Now this video is all about how to make your own bread buns at home. We are going to be making these 6 beautiful, light and fluffy bread rolls or bread buns. Now as usual we have all of the ingredients over here and I'm just going to run through that with you quickly, tell you how much all this costs. We have 300 grams of strong bread flour and this is 24 pence. We have 185 grams of lukewarm water, which we can't really cost. We have 7 grams of dried yeast at 16 pence. We have 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil at 2 pence. We have 1 tablespoon of sugar at 2 pence, and we also have a pinch of salt. Now if we add all of that up, the total recipe cost comes to 45 pence. And as I say, we're going to get 6 beautiful bread buns out of this. So that's going to be just over 7 pence a piece. I'm going to call it 7 pence. Okay, so to begin with, we want the yeast in the jug, and 7 grams of that is about 1.5 teaspoons, and to that we're going to add the sugar, and then we're going to put this on the scales and we're going to weigh out the water. The hydration is quite important for bread, so we want to get these measurements fairly accurate. Now as I say, this is a lukewarm water. It's not hot, it's not cold, it's just like a baby bath. And of this we want 180 grams. Sorry, we want 185 grams, and that's about it on the scales there. All right, now we just want to stir that up and leave it to stand for about 15 minutes. And what we want is the yeast to bloom, to froth on the top. And this will let us know that the yeast is still active and live and good for bread making. Okay, and about 15 minutes later we can see that the yeast has started to froth on the top, and that tells us that the yeast is good and still active. So what we want to do is just put this flour in the bowl, and as I say, this is 300 grams of strong bread flour, and to that we are just going to add a pinch of salt, and then we are going to pour in this mixture here, which is indeed 185 ml of lukewarm water with the yeast and the sugar in it, and we can bring that together. Now, we're also going to add the oil in there. This is 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil, and we want to bring all this together until it becomes a dough, and then we will start kneading it. That comes together very quickly. There it is. At this point we can get the hands in there and get it out onto the board. And what we want is just a little bit of flour on the board and a little bit of flour on the hands, and this will stop this from sticking as we start kneading it. It will be fairly sticky to begin with, and the more that it's kneaded, the smoother it will go. This wants a full 10 minutes of this activity, which is just pushing the heel of the hand into it, bringing it back and doing it again. And that is a full 10 minutes of kneading required. Now bread making is always a bit of a stop-start activity. Once this is kneaded, it needs to prove for about an hour in the oven. So it's always a good idea to have something else planned whilst making bread. Good opportunity to put some other recipes together, some cake mixes, or to make a couple of pies or something like that, whilst you're waiting for the bread to rise. Now I'm just going to continue doing this for a full 10 minutes. Then we'll come back and we'll see how it looks. And there we are, 10 minutes later. The dough is much smoother, and as you can see, if we press it like that, it's coming back in on itself, and that is about ready to go. So, in the bowl, I'm just going to put the dregs of that oil and just coat the inside of the bowl with it. We're going to pop the dough in there, just get a little bit of oil on the top of it. Now, we want to cover this and leave it somewhere warm for about 1 hour. Wants to be somewhere about 25 degrees, something like that, and that will be fine. Okay, and 1 hour later, the dough should be looking like this. It's doubled in size, and that's ready to turn back out onto the board. Now, first thing we want to do with this is just knock the gas out of it, just flatten it down a little bit. It doesn't really need another kneading. This is really just to get any of the built-up gas out of it. Okay, now we're going to shape this roughly. I'm going to cut it in half, like so. Then we want to get that into a sort of a oblong and cut that into thirds. That's about it there. And each one of these we just want to roll up and set aside for about 15 minutes to allow that to rest before we actually shape it into the bun. You could weigh these if you wanted them to be exact. It doesn't bother me that much if they're a little bit artisan, you know, a little bit rustic, that's okay. As I say, we want to let them rest, but what we also want to do is just put a little bit of flour over the top of them so that the towel doesn't stick to them. Right, we cover them up another 15 minutes. Alright, so 15 minutes later, these are looking good, and they'll just be a little bit easier to handle at this point with them having rested. So we want to knock that down into like a bun shape. Just curl it round at the bottom, like so. And we want to put these onto a greased oven tray. We just want to spread these out because they will rise and they will spread a little. So we have this, we have these three here, all looking good. And what I'm going to do is just another very light dusting of the flour on the top of these, because we're going to cover them at this point. And we're going to allow a second proving, so they need to stand for about another hour. And this will really add to the texture and the taste. It is possible to do a single proving, but with this particular recipe for these buns, I like to have them nice and light, so one more hour under the cloth. As I say, with bread making, it does take a little bit of planning, and there is like a stop-start activity. But once these have had the second proving, they're in the oven for a very short period of time, and that'll be it. Alrighty, so they've had another hour under there, and as you can see, they've plumped up a little. The yeast is still working there, and this extra hour that we've given them will certainly improve the texture and the taste of these buns. These are going in an oven at 175 degrees centigrade. The conversions are in the description below the video. And they're going to stay in there for about 10 minutes, 12 minutes, something like that. We'll just keep an eye on them after 10 minutes and see how they're doing. Okay, that's about 12 minutes later, and they are done to a turn. Golden brown, nice light golden brown, beautifully done on the bottom. If you wanted them to be a little darker, you just leave them in a couple of more minutes. But they smell absolutely beautiful. The smell of freshly baked bread in the house, in the kitchen. Fantastic. I'm going to let these cool a little bit, then I'm going to cut into them and show you how the texture has come out on the inside. Okay, look at these, that's cooled a little bit, and if you can see the texture of that, I don't want to tip it up too much in case it falls off, but that's a lovely spongy texture in there, beautiful smelling, fresh, homemade bread. Now sometimes the very simplest things are the best, so I'm going to try some of this. I've just put a little bit of butter on there, and as you can see it's melting into it, it is still warm. And that is going to be, And as I say, with making bread, it's a bit of a stop-start activity. What I managed to do on the first proving of this was to make a pan of leek and potato soup. And I'm certainly going to enjoy one of these with the leek and potato soup later. But it is a good idea, if you're going to make this recipe, to just plan ahead a little bit, so that you're not standing around for an hour waiting for the thing to prove. And can I say, if you've enjoyed the video, please do give it a thumbs up. It does help the channel a lot. And if you would like to see more simple homemade recipes like this, do subscribe to the channel. I do hope you give this recipe a try. Absolutely beautiful. There is nothing like fresh bread out of the oven. I thank you very much for watching.